It's such an honor to introduce this next amazing, beautiful guest who's also featured in the She Is Empowered book that has been out now for about a month. We launched it on March 8th, International Women's Day. I've known the beautiful Missy Kay for many years. We met obviously throughout the DJ promoter game, with Missy being the promoter at the time, myself being the preferred DJ of her choice to come and sort of jump on with her incredible Funk Inc. crew years ago. And she's just done some amazing parties and nights and gigs throughout Sydney, and I was really, really grateful to have worked with her and some great DJs. So, but on top of that, Missy's also an incredible entrepreneur, and she's just a woman of vision and you know, great purpose, beautiful family, and just a great legacy that she's been building over the years. So welcome to She Is Empowered. Missy, how you doing, babe?
Thank you. I'm doing well. Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. So like I said, I mean, look, you and I, we've known each other for a while, and we're both South African women as well, so which is really lovely. So we've got that little sort of homeland connection. But, you know, again, you're one of the incredible, you know, 29 co-authors that were part of my She Is Empowered book. And I'm so grateful that you were willing and trusting and just happy to share your journey, which just really made for such a great book. So thank you for that.
Thank you. It's so interesting that you keep thanking me for being a part of something, you know, so glorious. For me, one of the biggest things about what you did is, since my conception, I've always been about working together.
Yeah.
You know, together we can make a difference. That's always been my little you know, mission statement. And I created that when I was 17 years old, which is crazy.
Wow.
So, and I've always wanted to just bring the community together in so many different aspects. And, you know, women as a whole, we don't empower each other.
Not enough.
And Sydney, the culture is always full poppy syndrome. And we've been having that conversation for several years.
For the longest time, honey. That's a book in itself, just that conversation. So, and you're so right, you know, like people automatically think, oh, you know, women, we're all of us the same. No, we're not. Just because we might, you know, share similar sort of physical attributes and that makes us a woman, it doesn't mean we're all the same. And I think intrinsically, when you realize that there's a difference that lies in all of us, and each and every one of us have a voice and have the option to change the world for the better or to keep it at its worst, I think therein lies that empowerment sort of step. Right. So knowing that that is what obviously aligns with you, that's what you come from. And obviously having met your amazing mother, which I was so blessed of finding that at the book launch, it's easy to see, you know, that's has been input into you from a very young age. And it's how you choose to live your life. Right. So my first question to you, following on from that, is, what motivates you then to be an empowered woman?
I would say definitely my mom. Yeah, 100%. And also the adversities and challenges that, you know, that she's experienced, but also myself. Completely different, you know, generations. And my mom and I have, you know, really evolved in terms of our relationship because of such a big age gap.
Right.
So I'm the baby in the family, 9 years difference between my brother and I, 7 years difference between my sister and I. So massive age gap, you know. I was always teased for being the accident child or the one that they just found.
The accident child. I think our little one might end up feeling like that. I might have to change the term. He's the happy, he's the little surprise. We just call him the happy surprise.
A happy surprise. Well, that's what's really interesting because, you know, several years ago, my mom, she heard me say that because I was just joking, but because my brother and sister used to say it a lot and it used to, you know, create a complex in my mind. But then I just took ownership over it. And then my mom heard me say it and she said, I'd really appreciate if you didn't, because we tried for so long, and just
Wow.
recognizing that as a woman and hearing her out and her experiences. And then to say now she's like, you are my biggest blessing, because I don't know where I would be. My sister lives in America. So she's like, I'd be totally alone. And she's my bestie. I take it everywhere.
You guys do. And it's so lovely. You know, it's very similar to the relationship my mum and I have too. It's nice to be able to just hang with your mum and not feel like, you know, you're doing a favor. You know how like someone goes, oh, I better check on my mom, or I just need to do that. It's just nice when it just happens. You know, that's my mom. She's coming with me. She's hanging out. So yeah, I would definitely see that your mom would be a huge motivation to you. Absolutely.
A huge motivation. And like that part of that evolution of our relationship is quite interesting that you bring it up, that it naturally happens. Because when I was younger, it was definitely an obligation. I felt obligated, like obliged to be there, or that guilt. I was like, I can't have this fun and do this because my mom's not. She's working so hard. She's so dedicated to us. She's so dedicated to her family. She doesn't, and that was part of our lesson in terms of generational, was, you know, teaching my mom how to enjoy her life and be okay to spend money on herself. You know, it was crazy.
And you know what? I wonder if that's not a South African thing too, because
100%.
That guilt, right?
100%.
The guilt thing, and that's something, myself being the eldest, because obviously I've got a younger sister, being the eldest, there was definitely a guilt attached. Like I remembered when I first moved out of home, because my mum and I were always really tight. There's 16 years difference between my sister and I. So, you know, it was mum and I for years, right? I was like an only child for 16 years. And then my mum becoming a new mum at 40 years old. There's a whole lot of different challenges there as well.
Correct.
And me not realizing that my own life would sort of mimic that, with my firstborn being 12 years, 8 years older than my baby, and I was 40 when I had my second child. So it's just crazy, you know. So now so I'm sort of living through what because I remember my mum always used to talk about how difficult it is to have a child after 40, because your body changes, everything changes. And not only that, your patience level changes, right? The amount of energy that I had with Balian as opposed to Miles, and Miles is a lot more of an energetic child than Balian was at his age. So it's flipped the script. And now I sit there and I go, man, I remember my mum telling me how challenging it was, you know, after 40. So I think, and I look at all of that, but there was that guilt assigned to it. Like if I move out, my mum's on her own. You know, if I do something, if I go away, I'd love to take my mum with me. But I think I don't know if it's a mother-daughter thing or if it's a South African mother-daughter.
I also think that it's I would say it's a South African or person of color, maybe potentially, but yeah, definitely South African thing. I think with our culture, regardless of what our heritage is in South Africa, our value system is very, very simple. Like it's identical. Like we all possess the same level of values.
Yes.
Because you just know we're South African, you get along, you just click, it just happens.
That's it.
Just immediately becomes family.
All of us kind of look at each other going, even though we may have grown up in different, you know, sort of towns or cities. I mean, I'm from Johannesburg, right? So I know people from Johannesburg will say, oh, well, we do it this way. And then people from Cape Town, well, we do it this way. But then at the end of the day, you remove those boundaries. We're all South Africans. So we've got the cultural connection there, and how a lot of us were brought up, especially back there. Like if you were born back there, you were raised for a certain amount of time. And then you move to Australia, a lot of us will have the same story about what it was like to assimilate into Australian culture from South Africa, which is very strong. The South African culture is extremely strong, and especially raising children there to here. Polar opposites, right?
Polar opposite. It
It's
would,
crazy.
yeah, completely. And you know, growing up, I would always resent my parents for the strictness, because yes, I was born there, but I was very young when I moved
Right.
here. And you know, even like to a point where my sister just in 2018, she came down to celebrate her birthday, and she even checked me. She's like, I know you're over 30, and you know, but our parents are our parents, and I don't appreciate you speaking to them like they're your friend.
That's it. Absolutely, because you cannot be doing none of that, because you get the look.
100%. Because my brother, I'll never forget, out of nowhere, the way that he slapped the side of my mouth when I think I said shit. Right. The way that came out like a ninja, like that hand just came out of nowhere. Yeah. Like a sapat. Like it was just like, what is that? Absolutely. Like I didn't even know what it was. But yeah, because I know he always used to check me on it, because I wasn't talking to them, but I was in the vicinity that they could have potentially have heard me. And he was just like, I'm not having it. And even my sister to check me. But then my mom was like, because she's like, it's different now. This is my chummy.
That's it. And that's what I used to experience with my sister, you know, like and it's also the village that we were like, in terms of, when I say village, I mean the people around us, right? So we're raised by a village, right? So you come here, it's not really a village vibe. It's more left to your own devices, and you know, it's all that kind of stuff. So I always find it interesting when now, as adult women, and especially South African women who were born, didn't know each other back there, but we know each other now. And how has it been like growing up? You know, I really find it interesting, and we all have similar stories. All of us.
We do. Yeah, we 100% do.
So yeah,
and it's quite interesting, because I think about it, because we've always been at the same events, at the same occasions, sharing together, but we haven't understood and taken the moment to just connect.
Absolutely.
And it's so interesting, because I feel like things would have been completely different if we did. Absolutely. But part of growing up here is disconnecting from your roots.
That's it. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think now that we're in the positions that we're in, and especially within because we met obviously within the hip hop community, right?
Yeah.
And not all of the women that are in this book represent that community. So, but obviously I've had to pull people that I've had, or I've shared time and space with, across, you know, the various communities and groups that I sort of operate in. And the strongest connections would obviously be within that hip hop community. And finding women, like-minded women in the music industry or in the hip hop community, and I'm sure you could attest to this, has been challenging. And for us down here, we're not from the Mecca of New York. We're not from, you know, even like, you know, in the UK, they've got their little sectors and their scenes. And even South Africa has their own burgeoning sort of, and I'm only using this term for what I'm describing, but the urban music community, right? I don't like using the term, but for intents and purposes. But for us here in Australia, you know, it was always smaller than what people could imagine it to be, right? As in terms of the hip hop community. And then most of it, it's probably about 70% is male dominated. So then the 30% female, whether it be DJ, whether it be radio host, promoter, you know, PR people, you know, writers.
But even back when you started, I would say that would be a 90-10, a 90 and 10%.
Absolutely. So you're carving out this identity in a community and in a genre that is so male focused and male driven, yet relies on the female strength and the female voice to push it forward.
But they've never allowed it. It's so interesting, because there's the acknowledgement that yes, it will take a woman to actually get us to where we need to be, whether or not that's an artist that you're managing or whatever it may be, to create an event, to create a festival, to whatever, right? But it's like there's these barriers internally of the man that just continued to deny to accept that a woman is saying, hey, we need to check this and we need to get this done. And this is, you know, in order to get here and to progress here, we just need to align here. And these are the steps that are going to get us there. The amount of roadblocks that I face with trying to get stuff done by just leading men was
absolutely. And it's funny that you say that, because most of the managerial positions for these artists and for women.
Yep, all women.
Most of the, you know, the people behind the scenes that were managing the careers, managing the money, managing the direction of where these artists would go were led by women. So obviously now, and again, I've always been a real sort of champion for the historical aspect of how we got to where we are. Right? We didn't just wake up one morning and we had a hip hop community. It didn't work out like that.
God, no.
So that's where my purpose and sort of drive comes from, is that create the stories, speak about the individuals that were connected from when I first started, right? And even when I first started, when I realized that this is what I wanted to do, partly, I would then go, right, so I've written on these people, but who helped these people get to where they are? You know, so there's always the question of who happened before, and sort of paying homage to the before, right? So, you know, but I always look at what we've done as women within this community. And I really think it kind of started, in terms of the female energy, it started with us. And I used to be nervous to kind of own that at first, because you don't want to trample people's toes or offend. But I've been in this long enough now to know I've gone, came before that. You know, I think about females, DJ D, Fly Girl D, you know, to me it goes further
even
back.
Red Dog, I forgot her name, Fig Kid's manager.
Yes.
She's someone that's
it.
Yeah.
I forget her name too, but I know exactly what you're talking about. You know, and this is in our immediate circles, right? And then for me, the women before that, I can only ever think of one. It was Georgina Reed. Georgina Reed was the first female DJ that I ever saw on the decks here when I was kind of clubbing around like the 18-year-old mark. That woman was doing it for years before that. So for me, my role has always been who kicked the door open for us, right? We've kicked the door open for the ones to come, and I think it's okay to own that now. And again, this all comes to that whole, you know, the feeling empowered enough to own who you are and to own your position. Have you ever thought about your role within the area that you've been in for so long, in terms of being the club promoter and wanting to have a great collection of DJs within your entertainment business? Have you ever thought of, I'm doing this for others ahead of me, or has it just been in your present moment, this is how I'm doing?
In the beginning, it was 100% to grieve my brother's passing, because so much of my future when I was younger was entwined with him and his business. So my goals were directly connected to him. So then I felt like a complete lost soul. So in the beginning, it was definitely self-centered in that sense. But in saying that, I should give myself credit, because I went overseas to dance, because I used to be a dancer, and my sister lived in Japan, and they have a massive hip hop scene there. It's not urban, it's hip hop.
It's hip hop, absolutely.
It's hip hop, and it's been happening since the 80s. So I thrived there in terms of competition, excelling with my skills and my talents. And for me, there was a stage when I went, and then I had to come back, and then I had to go. And for me, I did come back, and I said, we need to do better. I can't keep sitting here and saying that we don't have anything here and then go overseas.
Exactly.
And that's why I did start studying, and I studied entertainment management at the Australian Institute of Music. And when I did that, a lot of people were like, why are you doing that? And I said, because we need to create an industry here. I'm sick and tired of hearing the urban terminology. The category for urban is not even
It's
like
not
when you
even,
think of the
thank you.
arias, there's like dance music, EDM thrown into urban. And I'm like, sorry, what?
It's just like a melting pot of whatever they deem falls under that banner. And it's just really offensive because
it is.
It's like oil and water. Dance and hip hop and R&B shouldn't be in the same classification, but we were all just thrown into it at that
thrown into it.
Life. Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, I would say that I definitely wanted to create more of a community out here because, you know, with me, hip hop is the culture. It's not the music. Rap and, you know, different like levels of rap. You know, you've got conscious rap, you've got mumble rap, you've got pop rap, different levels. Like even with DJing, there's different levels of DJing.
Absolutely.
You've got commercial DJing, you've got, you know, mix scratching. There's people don't understand.
Absolutely.
There's a whole lot of, you know, different varieties to it. And so for me, I'm like, we need to, the only way we're going to be able to create a culture is by creating a community.
That's it. Absolutely.
And I was actually telling Mike Champion this, that back in the day of MySpace, and when Facebook just started. Yes.
That's how far back we're going, people. MySpace.
Exactly. Yeah, that far back. But anyway, you still look good, girl.
Honey, please, I need glasses now just to read the question, but it's okay. The glasses make us look intelligent.
Exactly. But I was just telling him about how I had approached, because when I started my business, immediately I didn't go to Sydney promoters to get my DJs and my artist recognition. I went straight to Melbourne, I went straight to Adelaide, I went straight to Queensland and Perth, and I said, hey, these are my DJs, get them out there. And they were like, well, what have they done in Sydney? So people don't realize that my backstory is I only became a promoter to create events so that my DJs had their names on flyers.
Right. Wow.
But I just knew how to run stuff. Yeah.
I didn't even know that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. A lot of people didn't know that. So that's the only reason why. And
that's
then
because
because I thought international, because one of the things, the roadmap to success in the music industry in Australia, regardless of the genre, is get the fuck out and come back.
Yes.
It's only until you are overseas and you get some sort of international recognition that you will then be accepted in your home country.
And that, you know, that was a stigma that we had to deal with for so long, because I even remember with my radio show, the first My Club Flavors that I had on 2IJ, and the amount of artists that I was able to get on there, first unsigned, uncut, fresh demos, all of those stuff on the radio show. And these guys and girls, these men and women, were phenomenal even in those early days. You know, the potential that was there was infinite. But it was the lack of representation. It was the lack of management, the lack of proper understanding within the record industries here, and no A&R departments. Okay, so let's not even go there. They didn't even know what that meant.
No distribution, nothing.
Just log on with the dance and we'll be right. And I remembered a few artists coming on my show and me having this conversation. And I'll be, so what's next for you? You know, and they're like, well, I can't get distribution out here. I can't get representation out here. So I'm going to try London. And I'll be, okay, we'll come back. You know, I always say, please come back. And then you don't see them again. They've gone, they've collaborated, they've either session band players, or they're working over there, or their star is blown up over there, they're doing whatever. And then it started to become almost like a joke. You know, the minute someone would get a single, they come on my show, I'm like, please don't tell me you're leaving. Like, seriously, we need a stable here. We need our artists to own where they come from. But you know what, these guys back then, it was so unfiltered, you know what, and when I say unfiltered, I mean there was no strategy, right? We were all just in it with this amazing pool of talent and just hoping that we were going to be as large as the US would be in terms of the record industry, or as large as the UK would be. But our own record industry didn't even have faith in what they were doing at the time.
Well, no, they never allocated resources. They never allocated a team. It was, oh, this is Black music and we're not having it.
Yeah.
It was the only ever support in terms of record labels was ever given to rock, metal, anything whitewashed.
That's it.
And the saddest part about it is the people that did get signed were white. In hip hop, in the industry, you know. Absolutely. But one fact that I don't think that I really want to push out there was one of the first signed hip hop artists was actually Black, and it was Clever Fam.
Yeah.
Do you remember Clever?
Yes.
Clever Fam were the first signed, and they were all out because that's where K1 kind of came from.
Yes.
Because there was like a massive crew of them.
It was
they hustled.
Yeah.
They hustled.
And that's what it is. Then that whole hustling mentality had to kick in here. And if there was anything that they took from their American rap brothers was that hustle, because we had to hustle on such a different level out here. And it wasn't just the artists, it was all of us. Because we're all a part of that pool, right? So we all had to hustle. So we're on the other end now, and we're wearing different hats, but intrinsically we're all still, and when I say we, I mean our community. We should never forget where we've come from and what it is we've done. Because you look at the new breed, and it's not even really a new breed. I still sometimes look at it and I think, oh, we're still doing it. Where are the new recruits, right? Are there even, or is everything just blurred? Is it just blurred?
It's blurred.
And I do know that we have a very, very strong and very powerful independent movement in terms of artists being independent. Doesn't matter whether you dance, rock, whatever. The independent music artists here, really, I think we're writing the blueprint for that, because our artists have taken the independent thing and they've run with it. I think when they've realized that the record deal is not what they thought it was, I think we caught them a lot quicker.
We've never established a secure foundation and strategy, as you say, because if we did, then there would be that sense of support, and I think that's, you know, it's really sad, because that's why you say, is it blurred? And 100% it's blurred, but it's because the conduit isn't there, which may help me answer one of your other questions that you
yes. So lovely segue. So what do you believe your greater purpose is in this life? Why?
Being that conduit.
Really, don't say. I wonder where that came from. So being that conduit. Okay, explain why.
It's quite interesting, because when I've read that question several times, and for me, I'm a very selfless person in that sense. So I'm like, my greater purpose. It's always like, what is it? But I say, like, just having this conversation, I recognize, because I feel that there is a part of us that, you know, created that industry. We never had any support for ourselves. So then how do we then create it and be able to provide it to the next generation, to, you know, to teach it on, so that they are whole and can, you know, that's usually in the industry. What happens in America, if you're part of a crew, you support one artist 100% until they get up, and then they bring the team up, and that's how it always has worked. And we as a community have never been able to let the ego aside to allow that. Absolutely. And for me, I say that that is my greater purpose, because I have the foresight to be able to see that, and will always fight for that. Like I said, when I created Together We Can Make a Difference, you know, you think about a hip hop entertainment agency, you don't think that would be a vision. Like, I remember one of my business partners at the time, he was like, that's your vision? That's your mission statement? Like, that's a bit weird. You know, that doesn't represent much. And I said, yes, it does, because the biggest thing that we are lacking is a foundation, a structure that we can, and community.
And I think a spin-off from that, from what you've just said, is when we look at what's happening with our American hip hop, brothers at the moment that are dying. And right, death is inevitable. Okay.
Yes.
We can't stop heart attacks. We can't stop, you know, drug overdoses, whatever it is. But there's no support from the people who initially had them in their crews. I think DMX aside, God rest his soul, I know he had his memorial today in the US. DMX came in with a whole different crew, and a crew that really was like ride or die, okay, the Rough Rider crew.
Yes.
The business stuff got a bit blurred there as well. I know that there were some issues along the lines with some record deals gone wrong, and then obviously his run-ins with, you know, the law and his fight with drugs and his own demons. That's his testimony. But the man, you look at it today, he's revered because of his strength and because of his belief in himself, and allowing people to tell him what to do. But then we look at the flip side of it, and, you know, about for a few days later, Black Rob, who was signed to Bad Boy.
Yeah.
A phenomenal MC, to be homeless, to die penniless and alone, right? So I was reading in one of the comments, I mean, people were obviously, I think Diddy put a post up saying, oh, you know, you're a king, and everyone went at him. I mean, we've been having conversations behind the scenes about, so where are you? You've got millions upon millions, and this guy helped make you a millionaire, but he died penniless and alone. So where's the accountability here, right? Somebody wrote in one of the comment sections about there should be a hip hop union formed.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Should be a hip hop union formed for the older rap artist or the older hip hop. And I'm sat there and I'm going, these guys made money overnight when they started a hit. And there's been no real guidance for that. So you come from nothing, you've got a talent, it blows up, you sell millions upon millions, your records played everywhere, you're traveling the world. You don't even know, do any of them ever stop and wonder, have I got a little something being put aside, what's going on? So it's just, it's been a real, it's been hard for I
think about Craig Mack as well. Same thing happened with him. He
left and he joined some sort of like a communal, like some commune, but he died penniless, you know, and there'll be many more. There's so many more that we don't know.
There are.
So
that's why I say the conduit, because for me, another thing that people don't realize is that with Funk Inc., we got to a stage that I move in silence and people don't recognize.
And that's how it should be.
Yeah, you have to, because if you're going to make moves, you're going to make moves in the right way. And what people don't understand is that I got my business to a degree where my biggest objective for the business was ensuring that my DJs ended their careers with a superannuation, with a pension. So the only way I could do that was to make the company public and give them shares. That was the only way I could do that. And then that's where I stemmed off and I connected with Dubai, Thailand, Bali, and Hong Kong in order to kind of branch off so that we could get that international money and recognition to then boost the company so that the shares were profitable enough for my DJs to end with their pension, right?
That's amazing.
And then lockout laws happened.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. So absolutely. And then COVID happens, and then all of us are bye-bye, you know what I mean? So it's just, but the fact that you thought about that, and the fact that you thought outside of the box of just, you know, I'm just going to, you know, have this kick-ass, you know, DJ agency and have all these great DJs and they're going to do their thing and they're going to make heaps of money and they're going to make money. Money comes and goes, right?
100%.
And we're not always going to be young and hot and cool and, you know, and for a DJ, you've got to be visually.
I mean, like, speak for yourself. I'm joking. I'm just teasing. I'm playing.
I have to speak for myself. Game that, you know, the age is trying to creep up on me. I don't know, visually, the aspect of
you look exactly the same. And no, seriously.
I try. Just don't make me step up to the stage with this on, and then I'm like, the minute you do that, it's a wrap, right? But It's just not going to help for you. It's not help you long. There'll be she needs a soup, and now we're going to catch her out. It's been real, Miss Hennessy. Thank you.
Well, that was the thing, because whenever I booked you, you would always be like, oh my gosh, thank you. And you actually second guessed yourself. And
Always.
I was like, what are you doing? You were like, are you sure? Do you want me to? Do you want me to? I remember when I was like, do a different set. Don't just do open. The only reason why I had you on open is, one, because you had the capability, because people don't understand that there is levels to understanding a DJ roster. And that's another thing that I had to sell to venues. Like, don't just come out here and think that you know how to roster a DJ, because you don't.
Yeah.
There are different skill sets.
Different skill sets. You've got to place DJs in certain time slots, and age groups, and visually what it looks like for the age group to be. It's a whole history behind that.
That was the success to my business.
Yeah.
That's how I was able to capitalize on King's Cross and Newtown. Yeah. That was the success of my business, because I was able to sell to them by showing them how their night could run if they actually thought about it correctly, logistically, because
and
people didn't think of it like DJs that. Yeah, they're just like, oh, whatever, every DJ can do whatever. And it's like, no, there's a skill and there's an art form to
And it's also too, if you want a certain clientele to come to your venue, because I remember I DJ'd a lot for you at Zanzibar, the old Zanzibar in Newtown. I think it's called Webster's now. Great spot. Yeah. Levels to it. And I remember, the nights you used to get packed out and the line would go around the corner. I mean, this is a pub bar that's just got different levels of, with like different bars. And it was the spot to go to. If you didn't want to go into the city proper, it was the spot just out of the city, and you'd kind of go and hang. And the reason for me being, and I've been like that with every promoter that's booked me, with the gratitude, is because I know what it's taken to get there being a female DJ, and I know how quickly it ends for a female DJ. So the gratitude was always more for thank you for seeing me, and thank you for trusting yourself enough to know that hiring me, you're going to get a great night. You're going to get professionalism. 100%. You're going to get the playlist you want. You're going to get some surprises, some bangers, that type of stuff. You're not going to get rah-rah, because I wasn't booked at rah-rah times. If I was booked in a rah-rah time, then I come with a different sort of energy. But it was, the gratitude was always because I appreciated the trust, even at that stage where there weren't many of the female DJs around. It was, again, just myself, T and D. I remembered in the hip hop community, there were some other little ones popping off, but I look now, there's a lot more women that are DJing now, which is great.
And that was the biggest thing. Yeah. That's what I wanted, because I had Nikki D, I had you, I had Leash, I had DJ D. Yeah, I had so many female DJs, and it was so interesting, because I remember, just to go back on like the importance of that open set. Yeah. Because I had a DJ who is really big now, female DJ who is massive now, right? And she was just starting off. And one of my DJs, lastminute.com's like, I can't do open because I got too wasted yesterday and I can't make my set. And I'm like, oh, great. Yeah, thanks. So he's like, but it's okay, I've already organized someone else. And I was like, well, I've never heard this person play before live. Are you sure that they're going to be all right with open set? Yeah, no, 100%, this person's got it. I'll never forget the general manager calling me 10 minutes into her set going, who the hell is this? Wow. And he was like, no, never again, because they entrusted us. And a lot of the DJs would play, we'd spin less for less there. That was the only venue where we charged them less. But what every DJ still to this day says what they loved about that is the flexibility that I allowed them. I allowed them to be DJs. I had complete trust.
There was no, you would walk in and and I do this even to this day. And you walk in and you suss out the vibe, and you go, right, well, what I intended to play is not going to work here tonight. And you got to trust that intuition. A couple of times I'd gone against it, and I regretted the night at the end, because again too, we booked for an hour and a half sets, sometimes 2 in the bigger
2 hours.
clubs.
Yeah, I like to 2 because it gives you that allowance to really develop and build that rapport with the audience. I didn't like 1 hour sets. 1 hour sets was like, nah, we're not going to do that because I want to. Yeah,
that's it. So that, sorry, 2 hour sets in the city.
Sorry, yeah.
But I remembered, and I think you had booked me. It was like a real rah-rah set, because you got the opener, then you got that middle range, then you got the 12 to 2, which is rah-rah, and then the 2 to 4 is ugly rah-rah. Okay, that's when everyone looks the same, and you know what I mean, like you're blurred. It's just not pretty, but the club was going off.
Yes,
I never used to pick those dates, but I think I was DJing somewhere else and you needed me to finish it up for you. And I remembered walking in there and I was like, yo, this is even what I thought I was going to play. These people were off the planet.
Yes.
And I think a lot of the time, some DJs, like, you get into this headspace of, well, I'm just going to keep the momentum going. But there's also a safety aspect you've got to think about, because if you keep pumping them with that music and they're drunk or they're doing their thing, you can initiate fights if you don't. If you've got, and I used to always check, especially with the hip hop playlist. The more kind of bangers it can make. And I
like towards the end of the night, and then they'd request Tupac, and we're like, nah,
that's it.
I ain't got no Tupac.
Like hit him up with all the gangster stuff, right? And I remember one guy came up and asked for, like, I think NWA, like it was something, and I went, listen, you need a Coke and a smile. Okay, you need to just have a break, have a breather, chill out. I'll play you something, but it's not going to be that, because it's hot. The heat was rising, and the bar manager really came over, and I don't know what I was playing, but I was playing like cool stuff, but it wasn't like that. And he came over and he goes, seriously? This is like the hangover antidote, because these people are on a whole other level. They were throwing people out. There were fights going on just with the younger ones coming in and causing issues. And my sister was there, and I'll never forget, and I looked at her and I did this, the sign of the cross when we walked in, right? And I was just like, okay, I'm going to take it down a notch. I'm sure Missy will appreciate it, but I don't think we have fights going on out here, because it was hysterical. And the guy came over and he goes, thank you, whatever it is you've played, it's just taken it down to where you had that close, and it was great, you know? But there was sometimes I go in there and I'm pumped because I know it's the last set, and you really can take it to a whole other level. So,
well, that's what's really interesting, because I think that you being an empowered woman and being able to recognize that, because other men would come in, male DJs would come in and like be so hyped that they're like, and they would
this is it.
Continue that.
Absolutely. And that's why they would always get booked with the rah-rah sessions. Like a lot of the clubs I used to DJ, I was fine with the opener or that middle, the opener to like the one just before, because to build a night up is a lot harder. It's a lot harder than to come in as the heavy hitter and leave, because what you've had to build and step into it's been created for you.
Exactly.
To come in, do your thing and leave, and then you leave the club, and then the people at the end have got to slow it down. So I really enjoyed being that, because to me, I was like, I'm going to set your night up for you. And I did it every time.
Oh, you did it every time, man. Those lines used to be, I've taken pictures of just how far along King Street those lines used to be. And the greatest thing is that I noticed every single one of the DJs, you all would stay. You'd all just stay. Because it was just like, well, what's the point in going anywhere else? Because you guys would just vibe with each other. It was like that. It was a hub spot for us to just vibe, and that vibe, you know, was translated back to the crowd and the audience, and they'd love it. And people didn't even know that Funk Inc. was behind that. And the way that I had to fight for that, I had to fight for that.
I know you did. But again, it was always done in silence. So I think coming back to that original question with you being the conduit, I think it's always been what you've done. And I know that, you know, you and I have spoken a lot, obviously, even before we were doing the book. And, you know, when are you coming back with it? You know, and life takes over, right? We've had to really reconstruct ourselves as a community because of everything that's happened that's out of our control. The lockdown laws, COVID, lockdown, all of that stuff. you know, we're coming back now. A lot of us as DJs, you know, I DJ now, but I don't do clubs because there was no opportunity for me to be in the city anymore. And I think maybe being a little older, being a mum as well, I chose to get out of that because there was no one I really wanted to align myself with in terms of wanting to, you know, that would understand my needs and me understand theirs. But I'm very blessed to say that I still DJ. I DJ locally now, and I do every Saturday night, but I'm doing longer sets because it's just creating the ambience. But if it was like, could you do a 2-hour set and a banging club? Oh my gosh, the itch is there, right? Because
Yes,
that's what we came up on. That's how you know, was taught to be a DJ is slap bang in the middle of the club and keep that party going and make sure people pay to get in that door, right? It's not now just, oh, you just play and then just make sure they go to the bar. But I always have like a little benchmark. How many people can I get to go up to the bar with this track? Oh, okay, that works. So DJs work very, very different ways. Every one of us works differently.
That's why the funking DJs, there was always something different about funking DJs. I always recognized a funking DJ. And I'd say, okay, cool. I'm a roster you on. I'm going to have you. Because like we did a lot of things like we did Ferrari launch party. We did Bingley, every single one of Bingley's parties. We did parties for Kyle, Sanderlands. Like we did so many things. And, you know, it's really sad to say, but the only reason why I was able to, the person that opened doors for me was Libre.
Yes,
having Libre as a male, he opened the door for me.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
He empowered me to say, because he was like, I'm lazy, like I ain't gonna get nothing done, but you're gonna make the moves, so you do it. So he'd be like, you know, he'd get that recognition and that acknowledgement, and then if it wasn't for him saying, like passing it on and saying, well, you need to speak to Missy because she's my manager, and then reiterating that you need to speak to Missy because she's my manager. You need the amount of times that he had to say that. And even other DJs that worked with me, they'd always be like, well, you need to speak to Missy. If I didn't have that edification from any of them, I wouldn't have been able to make the moves that I had, which is sad. But, you know, you're going to take whatever you can take.
That's it. And again, it just comes back to women in this industry, women in this community. You know, we could do it anyway, but we always needed to have a guy going, oh, she's good. And it's something we got used to. I don't know about the younger girls now, and, you know, empowerment's different right now.
Yeah, it is.
Because of what we've had to do. And, you know, I did an interview the other day, and the interviewer asked me, is it still necessary to, you know, say women need to be empowered today? Are they not just born like that, of empowered women? And I went, oh, it will always be necessary to champion empowerment, and it will always be necessary to have books such as this and conversations such as this, and the reminder of the importance of empowerment, because it's not just, you know, every household's different, and culturally every woman is different too. So what we might deem as empowering and speak on it, other women are just born into it, and that they just step into it, and that's what they do. And then others aren't even reminded of their power. You know, so it's a
I had an artist long time ago say to me, he laughed at the hashtag empowered women when I used it. And I was just, I couldn't understand. I was like, why? And he was like, why is it that you feel like you need to be an empowered woman? Why can't you just be a woman?
Yeah.
And I was just like, wow.
There's different levels to it.
Ignorance.
Different levels. So speaking about empowered women, my last question for you is, how do you feel about being in the Shears Empowered book, and how has it impacted your life, if anything?
It's definitely hard within its, because for me, I've lived in the shadows for a long time in terms of the industry, and you know, not to say I need that recognition or that validation, because I definitely don't. My validation was having sushi with Q-tip, chopping it up with Supernatural, being able to drink water and laugh with sticky fingers from, you know, that's my validation. I guess royalty, and I got to experience that and have real authentic connections, you know, with people in the hip hop industry that shaped us entirely.
Yes.
And that validation came from, you know, hearing them going, whoa, you're actually a businesswoman. You're not a groupie. You're not out here trying to thought around. You're a businesswoman. I can see your hustle. The way that these Black African American men would just be like, yo, we need you out there.
Yeah.
Because we just got moms, our aunties, our cousins, our sisters who have no business understanding, but they're just empowered women that know how to run shit.
That's it.
Doing this, but you have the business hustle behind it as well. You see, we need you out there. So that my validation came from there. But in terms of empowered, and she is empowered, for me, that was huge, because I've told you, I've always been a fangirl. I don't know how you feel about this, but for me, I always say that you're the Angie Martinez of Australia.
That's the greatest compliment.
Oh, okay, good. Okay, because I didn't know. Okay, cool. Yeah, because I always.
Thank you very much.
Oh no, that's all right. But if you really look at your starts, how very similar are they?
Yeah,
you got to give yourself credit.
Absolutely. I mean, I do sometimes, but again, and I always used to doubt myself. And I've had people, you know, obviously as women do, we've had, and you know, women be very hateful towards me for those analogies, and you know, so I've often again always tried to move in silence myself with that, you know, but knowing that, you know, Angie was always someone huge inspiration, you know, huge.
But when I think about your stories, your backstories, and your history of where you came up and what you did, it's very similar, girl. Like, it's very similar. So whatever analogy it is, like if people know your story and people know Angie's story, it's very ridiculously, eerily. So I, with confidence, always say, you know, you're the Angie Martinez Australia. I always say that. Always. So to have. So to have you say, you know, Missy, I want you to be a part of this project and co-author this, and I was like, wow. And then I also forgot to give myself that credit, which we as women do a lot. We don't stop, pause, and say, hey, I did the damn thing.
That's it. We don't. And I don't know if it's us here. It might just be here though too, because you look at our African American sisters and even our English sisters, they are championing and flying that flag for themselves all the time. All the time. So I don't know if it's because we have been silenced a little bit because of that tall poppy syndrome crap that we deal with here, or if it's because it's just that extra ounce of I'm cool, I don't need to validate, I'm okay, I don't need that, I'm okay. It's just, there's just,
it's not even that. I think it's also because it's because we are raised by immigrant parents, and with that comes, like, no matter where you're from in Australia, you're always from somewhere else, and that you know, that heritage, that lineage is there regardless, and it will always be. You got to keep pushing, you got to work harder, you can't sleep, you can't. So for me, getting that opportunity to work with you on your project enabled me to recognize and stop and pause and say, hey, hang on a second, I'm going to really accept this and thrive in it, because for the last 4 years I have taken, you know, a step down to study and to evolve and expand my knowledge and my skill sets. And it's been challenging as a hustler. I miss running my business. I miss hustling. I miss going, being on the go all the time and doing it because I thrive in that kind of energy. So that opportunity that you've been able to provide me just really reminded me and reiterated that, you know, I have been somewhere and I have done the damn thing, and I have the possibility to do it again.
That makes me happy, because I do know, and I know you've had other things that you've had to take care of over the last few years, as we all have, you know, and I asked that question because I just want it to be a counterpoint for, you know, us to know that even if we're not in the roles that we think that we need to be recognized, whatever we're doing, regardless of it's behind the scenes or we've taken a step out of the industry or the community, we're doing something else, the footprint is still here.
Yeah.
It still
100%.
needs to be celebrated. Yeah.
Oh,
So,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, that makes me happy to know that that's how you feel about the book. And what's the feedback been like? Have you had a lot of people kind of going, oh, girl, you in this book? And, or have you just been like, well, of course you're in a book. Like, what's it been like? I've had a couple of people go, yeah, of course you have. I go, oh, so you roll. Okay.
It was so funny. Like just a really just two parts to that, right? So last year, the beginning of last year, there was an event at Ivy, and it was like an African event. And I remember the kid at the door was like, oh, you know, entry is $30. And one of my homies that was there was like, you're gonna charge Missy Kay $30 to get into your shitty ass event, Missy Kay. Missy.
And the kid was going, and
yeah, he's like, no, because it's so funny because he was there and I was behind.
oh,
and
wow.
So then when he went to go put the wristband, because obviously I didn't pay because I'm such a princess. Yes. And so when he went to go put the wristband on, he's like, hi, Missy. Hey, Missy, it's good to see you, Missy. Haven't seen you in a while, Missy. It was so much disrespect. Like, he's like, man, I can't believe I charged Missy Kay $30 to get into this club. But the thing about it is I will always support. Like, no matter what event I always went to, I'd always pay. It didn't matter. It didn't matter. There was no way that I wanted to get in free.
Okay.
The only thing is, don't make me wait in a line.
Yeah, that's it. Ain't nobody got time for that. Ain't nobody got time. That's it. I don't
I don't. So yeah, so the second part to that was you know, I had a homie in New York who's been a friend of mine for the last 5 years, and he was like, I didn't know you were like that, like I didn't know you were Missy. Like, so a lot of people are like, wow, I didn't know your story. And for me, like, one of the things that you know, reading back my story and you know, having my sister read it, having my mother read it, and seeing them get teary about it, like, you know, they were proud within themselves. I don't even think my family recognized what I did.
Absolutely.
I thought they just thought it was just a hobby. It's just wasting time going out clubbing.
I'm so glad that you said that, because I think for a long time too, I know with my family as well, I think in the beginning, my dad, God rest his soul, you know, when I first told him I was going to be a DJ, he didn't respond. And he just went, of all the things, he's like, you see, you know, the lineage you come from. My dad was a musician.
Is it music? Yeah, exactly.
Right? And my uncles were the first coloured radio DJs in Johannesburg. So that's I come from that. I come from that. But nobody had ever really kind of picked up the baton after, you know, both of them passed, unfortunately, in really, really terrible circumstances. My dad's always been musically inclined, so I knew I was going to do something musical. And then my dad's other brother was a journalist, and he used to work alongside Nelson Mandela, and he used to write a lot of his papers and stuff. So it's in the bloodline, right? But none of the other kids have taken up the journalism thing. None of the other kids took up the music thing. So I would lock with both, and I ran with it. And it's a part of who I am. But my dad, there was a great trepidation for him when I first said I was going to be a DJ, because in his mind, it's not females' role. It's not that he was like, you can't do it. It's more, but that's not what, do women do that? And my dad's real old school with traditional type of stuff. And then I was like, well, I don't care if they can or they're not, I'm doing it. Because I think I'll be good. And it wasn't even the radio thing was great. It was when I got asked to do it outside of radio. And then I'd invited him and mum a couple of times to Redmond, because that's where I got my first residency for 8 years. Amazing opportunity. Yeah. And after a while, my mum was like, come on, Steve, we just have to go. We've got to support her. Hello, mum and dad would come once a month. Okay. Yep. It was like their night. and my dad was dancing with all the women and whatever, and it was a great thing. And you know, he would just look at me out of the crowd and he'd wink, or he'd blow a kiss, or you know, and it was that pride for him that I said, is she going to do this? And she's not only done it, she's done it, right? So
yeah,
I always think of that sort of analogy too, with our parents have looked at us and gone, oh, it is just a hobby, or it's just something she does. And then my mom saying, you know, with my book launch, she's known I've been a writer for many years, but I think that day when she walked into that room and she saw the room and she saw the visuals on the presentation and seeing the book, and she just said, I would never have imagined it's next level. So yeah, so it's interesting once your parents start to go, this is my kids, this is what they do. Yeah. It's really interesting.
It is.
What we do with it, right?
It is. I remember reading like my little section, and I thought, oh my gosh, in the beginning I was like, oh, I was really raw, because there's obviously different levels to me. You get the professional side, and then you get the silly Missy, who just loves to have fun. And it's not even about being silly, it's just I'm just authentic like that. And your book actually got the authentic side, that it was such a vulnerable level of me that I actually immediately cringed and was like, oh my gosh, like the world is going to see that side. And people always see me composed and you know, holding it together.
Writing is, you see, it's such a vulnerable thing. And I think even for me too, you know, and a few people have asked me like, how did I come up with the idea? And it just came to me one day. I think I just sat and I said, I need to write something with purpose, and I don't need to look to celebrities. You know, celebrities weren't doing shit. It was COVID. Yep. None of us, they were not doing a thing. And no one's going to want to talk about what they're doing in their downtime. I think all of us were just gardening and crafting and, you know, hoping and playing in our children's room. I found things in my kids' rooms that I had lost years ago. And I was like, this is great. But so this is all we were doing, right? But as a writer, it was the perfect time to redefine and to examine other avenues that I hadn't explored yet. But it was always a hope of mine to go down the path of, you know, writing, you know, biographies and autobiographies, and that's always something that I've done. Because if you look at my work and even my blog and the interview style with artists, it's always, how did you get to where you are? Not where you are now and where you're going. How did you start to this amazing man or woman? And then I just sat and I thought, I have so many amazing women in my life, and these women have done brilliant things, and they're still doing brilliant things. But there's no book on that. Every time we go to a bookshop, and I've got 2 of these books similar to what I've written, I don't identify with any of the women on the cover. We look differently, right?
That's what I was saying. I don't know if you saw my message, but one of the biggest things for me was, hello, I don't know if you recognize this, but not only have you done this for women, but you've also done this for women of color.
That's it. And that was the biggest driver for me. I was sick of going to bookstores and finding great books. I've got one called something about game changers. I think it was written by the same 2 women, Game Changers and then Mothers of Purpose or something like that. Great titles. But don't look like me. Don't speak to me. And just because you're a mother doesn't mean I'm the same. I mother differently. I mother different. Yep. My culture's different, so I'm going to mother differently. So you've written 100%. This book to more mothers. The woman down the road is going to be different to me. And it used to get to me as much as I was like, oh, this is great. It used to get to me. And I always said if I had an opportunity, I wanted to create my own. But I didn't know when that opportunity was going to be. We never do. And I didn't know how I was going to make it happen, because we never do until we do. And I think when I started with the idea, and I remember speaking to my husband about it, I said, I want to do this. Do you reckon? And he goes, whatever you set your mind to, I know you'll do it. And I know that you're going to come at it with the right intention. But don't be disappointed if you get no's, because they're sharing the story. I remember him saying that to me. I went, okay. Like, he's like, don't have expectation that everyone's going to say yes, because everybody sees themselves in that fashion. And he was right, because out of the 29 women, I think I had 35 originally. And the woman that I work with in the US who did the design and layout, like my publishing partner, she even said, look, 35 women's a lot. And the idea of me putting the picture on a cover, she'd initially encouraged me to go with like just a painting of something, like a drawing, and then maybe have all of the pictures at the back. And I was like, no, I don't want that. I want the visual representation of what every woman needs to see, because every woman is on that book, as far as I'm concerned. And she went, okay, great. So we played around. And then as time went on, I was getting a lot of, no, I don't want to be in it. No, I'm not going to do it. Some were like, no, because I don't think they thought anything was going to happen with it. Or others were, I'm not ready to share my story. And that was fine. I think at the end, when I saw that cover, it was like, it's just a different moment for as a writer, and then I think also as a publisher to go, this is what I'm meant to be doing.
But also a woman of color. I think that speaks volume. Yeah.
You know, and even the woman that I aligned myself with in the US, Tanika, she's you know, this incredible African American woman whose own ethos is helping women, you know, obviously her story and her testimony, domestic violence. So she started her publishing and dedicated to stories on women who survived domestic violence. So, you know, it's just, you've got to align yourself with the right intentions and the right people. But I think when it came to the women and the list of women, I don't think I could have had a better grouping of women for my first book, or my first book ever. I don't think I could have done that any better than I did.
Yeah, I agree.
So it's just, it's just something I look at and I just think, wow, you know, how the universe sometimes works. So it's
all about timing, right? And allowing the universe to get you there, trusting that it is going to get you there. Because I'm pretty sure, based on your you know, your journey, I'm pretty sure there were moments in your journey that you were just like, it's not going to happen. Like, time's up. Like, it's been done.
In terms of my writing journey, or just the journey with this book?
Everything. Your whole journey is a journey.
It really is. And I've lived several lifetimes in that journey. And Jay and I obviously talk about it, like with our military life, you know. And 10 years ago, I was leaving Sicily to come back to Australia with my young son, and having finished a lifetime there, and then coming here and going, right, what am I going to do to redefine Miss Hennessy the second time around? I'm a wife and a mother. It was 10 years ago, you know, and at that stage, I would never have imagined I'd be where I'm at now, and have another child, and you know, writing and all of that sort of stuff. But it has been a journey, and there've been many moments where I've gone, I ain't shit. Nobody cares. I'm not relevant. No one's going to read it. And it's a horrible creative thing. It's a horrible thing creatives do, is that doubt. And so that there have been moments. And I will say, I think after my first book, the Pattern for Love, that was the what do I call it? Not the Achilles heel, but like the penance, sort of letter for me. Like, it was just, there was a lot of pain with that experience, and a lot of learning with it. And I had to pick myself up after that.
Yeah, you had to.
If I wanted to ever put pen to paper, I had to pick myself up.
Exactly.
It's been a lot, but you know what? We're here now, and I just before we'll just keep talking for hours and hours and hours, and the people.
Yeah, we will. Because I know you were saying like this
series.
Yeah. I know you said like I want it to be, you know, you feel free to ask me questions, but I don't even realize I don't know if you've realized that I've been asking you questions by just
I see you. That's why I wasn't gonna go, oh, you can ask me questions. I was like, I know what she's doing. She already did. She's married and traveling already. So it's been awesome just to connect with you on this level, and just
likewise
hear a little bit more about, you know, what your thoughts have been, and obviously since the book has come out and all of that sort of stuff, and how it's been. And I'm really glad to know that it's sort of given you a bit of a back boost as well, to know that what you would do
100%.
before you stopped, just pick it up whenever you're ready and do it, because it is much needed and it was always appreciated then, and it will be even more appreciated now on the aftermath of everything that our entertainment industry has come out of. So if I'm any kind of example of,
which you are,
and starting, the ebb and the flow, it's just to keep flowing.
You 100% are. Yeah, 100% are. Like, I started Inspired Consulting just a few years ago, and it just wasn't the right timing, and to take the break, and I felt in that moment that I was a failure for not being able to start it, but I've now accepted and allowed myself to say just the timing was not right, and I'm okay with that, because I see that timing and I can see it all, and it's all lined up, and it's incredible.
The timing definitely is. Listen to the timing of your life, man. And it's the hardest thing for women and control freaks as well. I never thought I was one until I had to become one. And then now that I'm sort of a little older, I'm trying to be less of one and just let the universe take control. It's very difficult, especially again,
finding that balance.
But being women in this industry, you couldn't help but take control, because you couldn't trust anybody else to control. And
exactly,
any women that are listening, or younger women that are wanting to get into the industry, and your voice is needed. If you've got passion and true intent for wanting to do the right thing, you get involved, but you never ever let anybody steer your journey for you or take heed of your path, right? Like, you just kind of have to take your own path. And I know it sounds obvious, but so many just renege that power just to say that they achieved something. No,
I remember when I first started, I would expect people to have the same level of passion and drive, and that was my biggest learning biggest lesson. It's not the biggest mistake, because it's definitely a lesson, because it allowed me to just accept who I am for who I am. Absolutely. And I was able to be the entrepreneur that I could be.
Right. That's right.
Because I kind of felt like I needed to bring people along, and I wanted to do it as a team, and I didn't want to look like some mad control freak. And
I know. It's a really thin line. But yeah, I think we've done well, and I think we'll continue to do well moving forward. So thank you, my love.
We will. Thank you so much.
You're very
and I wish you all the best.